Bone is with us from BamaInsider.com, part of the Rivals.com network. And let's get right to it, Bone. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, we're going to focus obviously on Alabama for the most part. I am going to ask you about a couple of other players at other schools, but let's begin with the bad news, and it really started leaking out last night, but Chris Bogle does flip from Alabama to Florida and cited the coaching changes at Alabama as a reason. What happened there?
Not really a major surprise. I'd been hearing that he was likely not going to end up at Alabama. I know that Alabama had, really tried to, get back in on him late. And, Sal Sinceri and Joe Panunzio did a really good job recruiting him all the way until the end. And I think Alabama felt like they could get back in there and, turn his attention back towards Alabama. But, we've been hearing, ever since that visit to Miami this past weekend, really started hearing it pretty strong on Monday that he was probably going to end up at Miami. And then it just completely turned on Tuesday. I mean, we heard pretty early in the day on Tuesday that it was looking strongly for Florida. So we're, checking with all of our different sources, and everybody seemed to think he was going to Florida. And, he basically just said that, it had come down to Florida and Miami for him, and his relationship with the coaches up at Florida. And, after he took an official visit up there, just felt very comfortable. So ends up, leaving Alabama's class, blow to Alabama's class, which, I think Alabama fans look at it and they say that, a Rivals 100 kid, an edge rusher. Alabama needs to get an edge rusher, especially with Yabi and Noma entering the transfer portal yesterday. But, I still think that Chris Bogle, very good player, but probably needed a year or two to develop overall.
Sure.
He probably needed, a year or two in Scott Cochran's strength and conditioning program. So overall, not a major loss, a loss on paper, but I think Alabama at the end of the day is going to be just fine.
Yeah, okay. Good news at 8 a.m. over in Mississippi, Byron Young, the big defensive lineman that Alabama loves, been committed for a long time but did not sign early from West Jones High School there in Laurel, had gone to LSU this past weekend on an official. There was some cause for concern, but he stuck with the Tide, and this is a nice pickup for one of these interior defensive linemen that are so hard to find, and could be a Dalvin Tomlinson type. Who knows? Maybe he'll blossom and be the next Quinnen Williams, but he's a good football player.
Oh, great football player. I mean, Alabama's ecstatic about this kid. I mean, he's probably right up there with Antonio Alfano in terms of, in Alabama's eyes. I mean, they've loved this kid for a very long time. They've wanted to hold on to him. I mean, when he didn't sign with Alabama in December, there was some rumors going around that, Alabama asked him to hold off, and that was just not true because they've held him in such high regard for a long time. They've wanted this kid. I mean, he had just an excellent senior season. I mean, over 126 tackles. 126 tackles as a defensive lineman is incredibly impressive. So, they get him on board. I think they're really excited and, big get for Nick Saban today because, as you said, he visited LSU this past weekend. He visited Ole Miss and Mississippi State. I think with the addition of Brian Baker to Alabama's coaching staff coming over from Mississippi State, I think that was a huge get for Alabama. I know that Ole Miss really came in late. Even as of yesterday, they were really trying to get him to flip, but it didn't happen, and he stuck with Alabama.
Yeah, indeed. Nice pickup for the Tide. All right, let's run down some of the other prospects that Alabama is waiting to hear from, kind of in order of at what time they're supposed to sign. And I've been calling him Quayshawn Fuller. Is it Quayshawn? How does he pronounce his first name?
I've been calling it Quayshawn.
Okay, well, let's just stay with Quayshawn Fuller. But the Florida State commitment that visited Alabama is set to announce at noon. What's the latest on him, Florida State or Bama?
I think he sticks with Florida State. I think his mom wants him closer to home. He visited Alabama this past weekend, but end of the day, he sticks with Florida State.
All right, this is one that Alabama fans are on pins and needles about. Ismail Sophshire, the defensive lineman out of Amite, Louisiana, had gone from 2 o'clock to 12:30. Now we're hearing 12:45 p.m. on ESPN2. I have read some stuff, Bone, that LSU really laid it on heavy this past weekend, and that a guy who we felt like was leaning to Alabama all along might wind up signing with the Tigers. What's your intel tell you?
Well, yeah, I made a prediction last night of Alabama, sticking with that prediction, but it's close. I mean, it's, I said this morning, I said it's one of those predictions where it's 51-49, so could pretty much go either way. Just going to depend on how he's feeling when he makes that decision. Now, I think there's a good chance that he's told at least one coaching staff what he's going to do, but I think that could change. I mean, it happens all the time. People have second thoughts and change their decisions. We saw, several years ago, we saw Cyrus Kwanjo announce his decision for Auburn on National Signing Day. And, everyone thought it was over, and then he decided to, his parents got pretty upset about that, decided to hold off from signing, and a few days later signed with Alabama. So stuff like that happens.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that with Ishmael Sophshire today, he's going to sign, get things over with. It's going to be Alabama or LSU, and as of right now, I'm still picking Alabama, but it's extremely close.
Seither, the tight end out of Florida that Alabama has gotten involved in, really, good pass catcher, route runner, has been compared to Greg Olson, of course, the former Miami tight end, great with the Carolina Panthers, and that's high praise, but probably not trending to Alabama, but he is set to sign at 12:30. Any hope for the Tide there?
I don't think so. I think he ends up going to Georgia.
Right.
I think heading into today, Georgia had 2 open spots. I think they felt pretty good about Brett Seither, and they weren't sure who else what they were going to get. All of a sudden, they got a big flip from 5-star wide receiver George Pickens from Auburn. So, obviously a big get for them, and I think they'll end up getting Brett Seither as well.
All right, let's talk about Keelan Robinson, the running back that is committed to Alabama, but he's out of Baltimore. He didn't sign early. Mike Locksley, obviously, with a lot of influence with recruits in that area. He's now the head coach at Maryland. Do you think that Robinson winds up sticking with the Tide?
I do. I think he's gonna sign around 130, and he took an official visit to USC this past weekend. I think that was just pretty much a trip to go out there and have a free, all expense paid trip to Los Angeles. I mean, who wouldn't do that? So I think he enjoyed that trip, but come 1:30 today, I expect him to sign with Alabama.
And then a big one at 2:00 on ESPNU. Henry To'oTo'o, the linebacker out of Concord de La Salle in California. Alabama seems to be trending, but you've got Washington there, Tennessee still hoping to get a commitment. What is your prediction on To'oTo'o?
Well, I predicted Alabama, and we're going to stick with that prediction, but I think it's kind of like Ishmael Sophshire. I think it's close. I think it's closer than what most people realize. He's one of those kids that just hasn't said a whole lot to the media, doesn't really let anything leak. Camp has been pretty quiet in terms of saying anything, but started to hear yesterday. We've been talking about possibly down to Alabama and Washington with Tennessee starting to fade, and all of a sudden yesterday afternoon was starting to hear a little bit more that Tennessee was in it, and so I'm watching Tennessee pretty closely today, but I'm still predicting Alabama, but I don't think anyone is really quite confident in that pick for Alabama. I think everyone just kind of assumes that's what it's going to be. But, could he pull a surprise today and go somewhere else? It's possible. It's signing day. Anything is possible, as we kind of saw today when George Pickens flipped his commitment from Auburn to Georgia. Yeah,
and I want to get to that in a moment. But sticking with Alabama for now, and so pins and needles for Bama fans with Sophshire and To'oTo'o too. That the Tide fan base really wants to see in this class. But again, it's very close to call. You just heard the latest from Bone. It'd be nice to get both of those guys from a Bama perspective. One of two wouldn't be bad. The last thing you want to do, though, I think, is go 0 for 2 on those two guys, Bone. That would be, if that were to happen, even though Alabama had a great December, that would be a blow here on this second National Signing Day if they strike out on both Sophshire and To'oTo'o. You'd agree with that, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think Alabama is really excited about getting Byron Young on board today.
No doubt.
They kind of knew what was going to happen this morning. I think they've kind of gone into this afternoon thinking, what's going to happen? What's going to happen with Sophshire? What's going to happen with To'oTo'o? They kind of have a general feeling, but you just never know. And I think, I think they would be disappointed if they missed on both of those guys. Certainly would like to get one or even both. Most people are projecting Alabama to get both of those guys, even though it's close. I mean, I think either one of those guys could end up going somewhere else, stop there, possibly to LSU, Tola, as I mentioned, possibly to Tennessee. I mean, I still think Washington's in it, but just from everything that I've heard over the last 24 hours, it just seems like Alabama or Tennessee. So we'll see what happens there. But overall, great recruiting class for Alabama, regardless of what happens with these two guys, because it's going to end up as the number one or number two recruiting class in the country. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, Kirby Smart and Georgia making their push for that number one spot. More on that in a moment. A couple other guys that Alabama's been mentioned with. Obviously, if Keelan Robinson sticks with Alabama, and I'm with you, I think he will, that's a pretty good sign that Jerrion Ely is not going to be in this class, the 5-star running back from Jackson Prep over in Mississippi. Of course, you've got to deal with baseball with him come the June draft as well, but is Clemson your prediction for him? Is that where you think Ely winds up signing?
I think he ends up at Ole Miss.
Oh, do you really? Okay.
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning towards Ole Miss there. I just felt there's a lot of momentum there with Ole Miss over the last few days. Just from talking to sources at Clemson, sources at Ole Miss. I don't think it's going to be Alabama, and I think Alabama would have taken his commitment regardless of Keelan Robinson. But I think with baseball, there's a very, very high chance that he's drafted in the first round of the Major League Baseball draft. And I think with Clemson and Ole Miss is pushing so hard to get him regardless of baseball, I think he will end up at one of those two schools over Alabama, and right now I'm thinking it's going to be Ole Miss.
What about Jaquez Sorrells, the defensive lineman that Alabama got involved with? Where's he going?
I think he ends up at South Carolina. Now, he originally committed to Florida back during his junior season, reopened his recruitment, and Alabama got so involved with him, recruited him kind of all the way until the end. He visited Alabama this past weekend. I do think there's some academic concerns still with him, but in the end, I think he ends up going to South Carolina over Alabama.
All right, Bone. Anybody else out there? Josh Jacobs a few years ago. Any signing day surprise that we don't see coming that you might, be on top of? Anybody out of left field that can wind up in this class that we're not conversing about?
Yeah, not really. I mean, most of these guys are, that we've talked about for such a long time. We know about. I think Alabama's really just kind of waiting to see what happens with Ishmael Sophshire and Henry Tola today. I mean, I think those are pretty much the only guys that Alabama fans need to, pay very close attention to. I think the other guys that we've mentioned, I think all those guys are going elsewhere. Devon Shepard, the 4-star lineman out of Texas, I think he ends up sticking with Texas in the end. But I just think that, like I said, Sophshire and Tola are the only two guys. There is a punter. There's a possible grad transfer punter from South Alabama. Corliss Waitman. That may be a guy that Alabama brings in. Not sure if they're going to put him on scholarship. I think that's kind of up in the air. I think right now he's being invited as a walk-on. So that possibly that changes if Alabama doesn't get Sophshire and Tola. They could end up putting him on scholarship. But as of right now, just inviting him to walk on.
All right, Bone, some other headlines this morning, and you mentioned it earlier. Let's just get right to it. Auburn took a couple blows this morning. The biggest Pickens. Now, listen, I don't know what the deal is with this guy, Bone, and I want to get your take on him. I've heard some, whether it's academic concerns or attitude concerns, but as a football player, I mean, I think he's a Justin Ross type player. I mean, I think he's an impact guy. I mean, I've watched him in high school. I did the Mississippi-Alabama All-Star game. Was on that broadcast. This guy's a tremendous football player. Big, strong, fast, physical, huge hands, 5-star talent, and he flips from Auburn to Georgia. Now, I see a lot of conjecture out on the internet this morning. Well, he's not going to be eligible and all that kind of stuff. But regardless, that's a blow for Auburn because he had been in their class for a long, long time. And to sign with Georgia, it's a big hit for UGA, at least for today. Again, we'll see if he winds up there right away. But in terms of the recruiting rankings, this is a big hit for Georgia and a big blow for Auburn. Yeah,
it certainly is. I mean, George Pickens, I've watched him play several times, seen him at 7-on-7 camps, seen him play live, seen him in the All-American game, and he's just an incredible athlete. I mean, He's a different type of player because you never really see that big of a wide receiver be able to move and cut across the field the way he's able to do. And I think he's obviously a great overall player. If he can qualify, it's a big win for Georgia. But I think there's still a long way to go there. And that's something that they're going to have to be patient with and try to work with them and see if they can get him in school, because I think a lot of schools that were recruiting him backed off in the fall and maybe even late in the recruiting season, because there was a lot of work to be done.
And also Auburn this morning losing out on Ladarius Cox, the defensive tackle from McGill-Tulane. Now, he'd been a long-time Tennessee commitment, but I think everybody knew he wasn't going to sign with Tennessee. I was really feeling like it was Auburn, and he signs with Ole Miss this morning.
Yeah, big pickup for the Rebels there. And I had actually got a phone call probably about an hour before he flipped, and just was talking in general about some kids, and had heard that he was going to Ole Miss and not flipping to Auburn. So I saw this kid down at the Rivals camp back in the spring. Big defensive lineman, really good athlete. I think he's got a chance to have a really good career.
I do too. I'm with you. I think he's a good player. I think it's a nice pick. Speaking of Ole Miss, and especially if they get Ely, of course you got to deal with baseball, but I think they're kind of a surprise, and they're not going to be rated high. I understand that, but coming off, a season in which they weren't eligible for a bowl game, freeze out, still questions about the head coach there and his ability to be a long-term leader for that team. They've put together a pretty solid class. Wouldn't you say under the circumstances?
Yeah, I do. And they had a kid today stick with them, Jonathan Mingo, who's a four-star wide receiver that Georgia was trying to flip. And then Georgia actually had a commitment from quarterback Plumlee the other day, who ends up flipping to Ole Miss. I think a lot of people kind of expected that to happen. But, I think they put together a pretty solid class, there's no doubt.
Yeah, so give Matt Luke some credit. All right, going to let you go in a moment. I know you got a lot to do. Back to Auburn, losing those two players this morning, especially Pickens. I mean, I think they were expecting to get a big recruiting hit from him in terms of their ranking. Are they going to wind up inside the top 10 in your opinion?
I don't know. With Pickens, falling out of the class, just not sure if they're going to get there. I think they've got a four-star running back, Mark Anthony Richards, who's announcing. Believe around noon, or it might be 11. I can't remember, but I think he's leaning towards Auburn, so they could end up getting a big pickup there. But I think it's going to be tough for them to end up in the top 10 with George Pickens falling out of the class.
I do too.
Only getting one more commitment today.
All right, take on Mississippi State. They did hang on to Pickering. You could see that one coming. He was a incredible priority for them. The big defensive lineman from Seminary, Alabama, and others tried to get involved. What do you think of Mississippi State's class?
I think it's okay. I think that some of these other schools in the SEC have certainly done a great job, but I think that some of their top kids in their recruiting class, they got two elite players, two in-state elite players, in my opinion, in Charles Cross, five-star lineman, and also Nathan Pickering. I think being able to hold off Alabama's, really strong push for Nathan Pickering was a huge recruiting win for them. And they also went into Alabama this year and got a few players, including Lee Witherspoon out of North Jackson. One of the I think he was one of the finalists for Mr. Football. Had an incredible senior season. So I think overall they've got a pretty good class. They're obviously lost a big-time recruiter in Brian Baker over there, and Charles Huff to Alabama. So be interesting to see how they kind of rebound from that this upcoming year. But overall, pretty decent class.
And lastly, Bone, the kid you covered last year, arguably Alabama's top signee from a year ago, Iabi Anoma, putting his name in the transfer portal. Any feeling on that? Do you think he'll transfer? You think Alabama will be able to hang on to him? What do you think happens there?
Well, there's going to be a lot of recruiting going on.
Yeah,
there's no doubt about it from Alabama's side and from some of these other schools that are hoping to get him to come visit and stuff like that. But I don't know. It's hard to say what exactly is going to happen with him because a lot of times you see kids getting in the transfer portal and they're gone. And then, they're never going to stick with that school. But I'm sure Alabama's working hard to keep him on board, so we'll see what happens.
Well, it's going to be interesting. All right, great update from Andrew Bone. Again, Bone, I know you're working hard today, but folks want to follow constant updates on BamaInsider.com. How do they do it?
Well, just come over to BamaInsider.com, which is part of the Rivals.com network. We've got a official signing day thread that's extremely long right now, so it's a fun place to be. And you can also follow me on my Twitter handle at Andrew J. Bone.
Appreciate it so much, Bone.
All right, Gary. See you, man.